Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? You can't speak right now, so if you want to type in the chat, that will be great. So I really appreciate the time and trouble today. So hopefully we'll learn a few things, and if I miss some things and you got it to add, that will be wonderful as well. So let's get started in the world of Dynamics CRM JavaScript debugging basics. So my name is Mitch Milam. I am a Dynamics CRM architect. Independent consultant. I am also a 9-time Dynamics CRM MVP. This will be my 10th year working with CRM, and hopefully I'll be renewed in January 1st, and I'll be a 10-time MVP as well. So that's been a lot of fun over the years. You may contact me at mitch@xrmcoaches.com. Or Infinite-X is my main blog, or of course, a lot of you found me on Twitter this week, so that's great as well. So feel free to ask any questions in the question box, or we can wait till the end. It doesn't matter to me. As we go along, we can answer questions. So, and again, if we miss anything, we'll fix that at the very end. Okay, this is part of my Teaching Tuesdays program. So a three times a month, I have a webinar. And if you have any ideas, I used to have it out on the tiny URL you see there on a Google moderator site, but Google shut that process down last month. So if you got any ideas about things you'd like to see, then please let me know. Just send me an email. That'd be great. The webinar will be recorded, and I'll put it up on YouTube. You can access that from my YouTube channel, which you can get to from xrmcoaches.com/webinars. And you'll see any of the new webinars coming up, as well as recordings of the previous ones. So if you missed anything, don't feel bad. You'll have a recording you can go back to as well. So today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the basics of debugging in Internet Explorer and Chrome. Truth be told, I spend almost all my time in Internet Explorer, so if one of you happens to have a whole lot of Chrome knowledge and I say something incorrectly or don't know how to do something, then hey, absolutely speak up and correct me if I'm wrong. We'll also talk about some programmatic debugging constructs, and then some tips and tricks and gotchas that you run into as a Dynamics CRM JavaScript developer. So, first and foremost, everyone has probably at some time used the #1 debugging command in JavaScript called alert. All alert does is it will basically put up on the screen a message. So if you've never seen that, let me flip over to CRM. Oops, that is Chrome one. Let me show you this one. I'm just going to open up an account, and it's going to actually pop up a box that says, hey, here is an alert. Like that. Okay? Not very friendly, of course, and I'm sure more than one of you have actually left something like that in your production system, and people are calling you going, why is this box popping up with this funny thing in the middle of it? So that's how you do that. Okay? So that's what pretty much everyone uses, I would bet. It's just a way of displaying a simple message so they know what's going on. Now, that works if you're just kind of trying to trace what's going on, maybe if it's a simple thing and you just want to know, I'm going to pull a value out of a field, or I'm going to do something. What is the current state that I'm working in? So this is the quick and easy way to do that. But a lot of times you get into situations where it really doesn't work very well. Let me go past the demo. We've already done that. So both Internet Explorer and Chrome have pretty well-defined debuggers that will help you actually get to the inside of the JavaScript, so you can actually watch what's happening internally without having to throw alerts and things like that. So in Internet Explorer, you get that by selecting the Tools icon and selecting F12 Developer Tools, or very simply by pressing F12. Okay, so I'm going to do that right quick. Sorry, keep flipping back to Chrome. So here's my page, and the way this would work is you go to the place that you want to do your debugging. So in this case, I'm working on the account form, so I have an account open, and if I press F12 or just select F12 Developer Tools, it will actually pop up the debugger. Okay? So not a lot of fancy stuff here. Okay? So what you're looking at, this is the HTML that makes up the debugger. At the top, we have our the ability to step through the code as we want. We'll get into that toward the end of the presentation, where I kind of step you through everything here. But this is the overall thing. So you have a console where messages are displayed. As see one here, we have a access denied message. We can access the various files that are loaded. So if you've ever wondered how much is being loaded when you open a page within Dynamics CRM, if you scroll through this list, you'll get a really good idea of what's going on here and why sometimes it takes a long time to load things. It's because a lot's happening. Okay. We have some breakpoints we can set over here. We can add watches, which we'll get into, things like that. So this is the overall thing. So it's the appearance that you see in front of you is going to be 100% dependent on the version of IE and the settings. Sometimes it pops up as a separate page, as you see here, or it may pop up at the bottom of a page and just kind of push the page up so you can see both at once. Okay, so it really depends on the version. Some of the things at the top here are, again, going to be version dependent. If you're using IE 10 or 11 or the new Edge, I haven't worked with at all, so I can't speak to that. If anybody does and has anything to put in, well, let's talk about that there at the end. Okay, so this is the overall, what things look like within IE's JavaScript debugger. Debugging in Chrome is very, very similar. So you click on the menu icon, you select More Tools, click on Developer Tools, or if you're a keyboard junkie like me, you can just do a Control-Shift-I. And if we want to flip over to Chrome, I've done that. Very, very similar. This displays on the right-hand side by default. You can also move it to the bottom. Depends on what you're doing. Sometimes in either IE or Chrome, having it at the bottom where you can access stuff is a little bit less obtrusive, especially if you have a wide form. So I have a wide monitor, as you can see here, and sometimes it's just easier to see it at the bottom. Otherwise, what it will do is it will squish everything on the left-hand side rather than overwrite it. So you have the ability to see both your page and your code at the same time. So again, that's handy as well. Okay, another thing we can do is actually add a command to our JavaScript that will tell our browser to actually start debugging when they hit that command. The command is really called just simply a debugger. So if I go back into CRM and I have my form editor open, and if I click on form properties and I go and edit the web resource that we have, let's say that I want to put a debugging statement right here. So let's just type in the word debugger. Okay, I got debugger. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save and publish. Okay. Now I'm going to go back all the way back out to the account list and see if it loads everything back in. So there's an error there. Hopefully we'll look at that later. Okay, click on ADX Studio again. There is our message. And we didn't go into a debugger. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Let's hit F12. So we have our debugger displayed. Let's go back to our page. I'm going to do a Control F5 to reload it. Okay. This time you notice that it actually opened our code. Okay, so we have new underscore main new underscore account underscore main.js. That's our web resource. And we have actually stopped on our debugger statement here. Okay, so the trick here is you need to have the debugger open. Okay, an alternative to that is there is a setting within IE to actually break on errors. I'm not sure if anybody's ever turned that on before. If I jump back over here real quick, if I can get to it, I'm maybe in debugging mode. I can't. Yeah, I'll show it to you in a minute. But anyway, the idea here is that you can actually have it where you don't have to have the debugger open, that there's some side effects of that I can talk about. But this here is basically, okay, we've actually stopped our page from loading and we're waiting right here for you, the developer, to do something. Okay, And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the continue or the run button and have it finish loading the page. So again, that actually stops the page from loading. So it's actually not running at that point in time. Okay. So that's how the debugger works. So again, if you're working with something and you're really not sure where the error stops, you can put the debugger in there to make it stop at that specific point. Okay. Later on, we'll talk about adding a manual breakpoint, but for right now, that's how this one would work. Another way that we can actually write descriptive messages to the debugger is with the console.log method. Okay, so this one is pretty cool because this actually allows us to write stuff out to the debugging window that we're not actually going to see on the user interface. So this is really a good way for us to write notes to ourselves without interfering with the user, and the user never knows this stuff is there. So let's go back over into IE. And I'm going to go modify my form again. And I'm going to remove the debugger, and I'm going to put in console.log, and I'm going to write form type equals form type. Tell you what, let me put that in my code window. I forgot to tell you something really important. Okay, as you'll learn in any JavaScript that you ever see me teach, editing within the little white boxes, I call it, is basically a sure way to end your sanity quicker rather than later. So you always, if at all possible, work with Visual Studio to do your editing. Point one, it will tell you when you make stupid mistakes. Point two, it's easier to see it, color codes and things like that. If you don't have Visual Studio, if it's not part of your company or yourself, there is a Visual Studio Community Edition. Everybody write that down, Visual Studio Community Edition. That is a free version of Visual Studio. It will do just about everything that you and I would need to do as far as JavaScript with CRM. So that's really handy to have. So I'm going to modify this, and then I'm just going to take that line back out. Well, actually, I don't have to. I've already done it. But so the idea here is you open a new file within Visual Studio. You type in your JavaScript. You make sure that there's no syntax errors, which it will highlight with a little red squiggly somewhere. So this looks all good. So I'll go back to my form. So okay, that's fine. Click OK, and OK again. Then I'm going to save. I'm going to publish. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go back to my accounts list. Everybody's very quiet, so I'm assuming that you can both hear and see me. Is that correct? Somebody want to make a note on the chat or question that you can hear and see me? Very good. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, +1. Okay. Now let's go back in. Okay, there is our message. And we stopped at our debugger. Who can tell me what is missing from our code here? Anybody? Okay, let me reframe this question. Okay. Does this code on the left look like this code on the right? Okay, Jessica got it. Or Lisa got it first, sorry. Okay, it's not there. Who can tell me why it's not there? I refreshed my screen, Lisa. Something else is happening. We got a browser caching issue. This is the #1 reason why JavaScript developers have no hair. Okay, we'll get into this a little bit later. It's one of the things I'm pointing out, but since we ran into it, anytime that you're moving JavaScript back from CRM. So you're making changes, and if you make frequent changes like I did, so I made like 2-3 changes, within minutes of each other, the probability of the cache not clearing out and you getting the new code is very, very high. So sometimes you can get around that by setting your internet options, and I always try to get this wrong. So if you can see my page here, sorry, very small. Basically, I want newer versions of the store page every time I visit the web page, every time I start IE, automatically, never. These settings are used to improve the performance of websites, any website, not just Dynamics CRM. So for a user, a lot of times we'll have this kind of bumped up high because, as you've seen, CRM delivers a lot of content down to the browser that's just, one-time thing like images, the JavaScript that it uses for stuff. So a lot of times what we have to do is either as a developer, not to a user, unless you're really having problems. As a developer, you can set this to every time I start IE or every time I visit the page. And what that will do is it will actually download a fresh copy every single time. Now, it's not going to be performant, but we're really not after performant right here. We're after it for it working. Now, unfortunately, this is going to apply to everything. Okay? So use this with caution because it will make your entire browsing experience slower. But sometimes that's just the easiest way to do, because going like I did and deleting my browser cache can be problematic sometimes. Okay, so let's try it again one more time. Go back here. I get that. Okay, it did not pop up a window. If I go back to my F12 and try to find my resource, which is down here, which I can't find. How about new? I can do a search to find that. That's the easiest way to do that because, as you saw, there are hundreds of files. So if you just start typing the name. Okay, so we do indeed have the correct code this time because there is my line I just entered. And then if I look on the console, somewhere here, I might actually have something. Well, I don't see it. There it is. Right, it's right there. Okay, form type equals 2. So again, this is a way for you to just kind of keep a running log of what's happening. So you can turn off these warnings and errors so that you're only seeing things that you're doing, quite honestly. So that's just basically an information message. Okay, so form type equals 2, which is exactly what we wrote out. Form type equals, and then the form type that we get from the from CRM, from the object model. So form type number 2 is update, which is what happens anytime you open an existing record that is in a normal state, not a deactivated state. Robert asked about what if you do a control F5 to refresh your page. Robert, I always do a control F5. So that's a great point, though. So what he's talking about, if you didn't know, there's a little bit of misunderstanding about how things are refreshed here. So if you hit this button here, okay, it says refresh, F5. That reloads the page. Well, sometimes it doesn't reload. So what you do, if you hold the control key down and hit this, or you do a control F5, it will actually hard reload the page, which means it will actually reload everything back from the server. Okay, so if you're ever having caching issues, always do control F5, and that'll basically make your life much easier. So again, browsing caching is going to be the biggest problem you're going to deal with as a JavaScript developer. It will affect your debugging, as we just saw. Okay, and as Robert also mentioned, don't forget to do a publish, and we'll get into a couple things later here with that. Okay, so that is how the console.log write log does. Okay, console.log. So we put that in there, and all that does is just writes it out to the console. Now, I would not leave code like that in your production code, because the only way that you're going to be able to look at that is to actually open a debug window. That's probably not a situation you want to walk a user through, I wouldn't think, but it is possible. And then maybe what you could do is just have it where you you have a function that will write out to the log, and you control the writing of that log with a global variable like a debug mode or something like that. When it's set to true, it writes all the commands out, and when it's set to false, it does not write things out. So those are also good things to think about. Okay. Okay, setting breakpoints. So a breakpoint is a location in the code that we would like to stop the execution, okay, for whatever reason that we want, okay? So as we saw with the debugger command, what that did is it stopped it with basically a programmatic breakpoint. But occasionally we would like to see stuff stopped manually. So if I go back into IE, let's say I want to stop right here before we push that alert out. So I'm going to put the breakpoint there, and all I did, as you can see, is I just pushed my mouse over into this gray column area on the very left-hand side and just clicked, and that will actually put a little red marker, and what that marker is the breakpoint, and it says, I would like to stop right here before you execute this line. Stop here and let me look at stuff. Okay, so let's go reload our page. So doing Control F5. Okay, so now notice that we automatically swapped over to the debugger. We did not see the alert because we stopped right literally in front of the alert. Okay, so this is how you stop the code. So there's a couple of things that we can do here. So the first is we can look at things. Okay, if you look over on the right hand side, there's a thing called a watch. So there are some predefined watches. Some of these are called local. So a local is a local variable. Okay, a local variable, for instance, is our form type we have here. So if I hover over with my mouse the form type variable that I've populated from the get form type method, you will see it contains the value 2, and you'll see it over here as well. Down here a little bit further, I have another local variable called new account number, which is currently undefined because, well, I haven't gotten there yet. Okay, and since I haven't gotten there, I can't do anything. Okay. So we can step through this or step around the code depending on what we want to do. And we do that with these buttons up here. So we can step into, we can step over, we can step out, we can break on a new worker, which I'm not going to cover, things like that. So the idea here is if we would like to step into a function, say we have a function here, I would like to jump into this to take a look at all these things here. Or if we have this if statement here, I would like to step into this to actually do something. Okay, if I'm not concerned about what happens on the inside of this if statement or the inside of this function, I can just step over the function. It still executes it, but I don't want to go and go through each and every line that gets executed. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to do a step over, and it beeped at me, which means it displayed that thing right there. Okay. Also notice that it has, if you can see that, it's actually got a gray screen with 2 vertical bars, which is the hopefully universal symbol for pause. Okay. That lets you, the developer, or you, the user, knows that, oh, by the way, I'm actually in the debugger mode. So I can't do anything because I'm stopped right here. Okay. So I'm going to step over this. Oops. I'll say over into. I said step out. Whoops. Messed that up. Let's do it again. No problem. Yeah, step out will basically step you all the way out of what you're in. So we were kind of far in. It went into some JavaScript that CRM has, which you can't debug because it's been minimized. And I can show you what that looks like in a second. Let's reload this real quick. Okay, step over. Let's swap back over here to take care of my button click I need to do. Step over that. This one I'm going to step into. But since form type is not exactly equal to number 1, it didn't step into that. So basically we're down here, and I know for a fact that that this is the last. So if I just wanted to step over that, it would get back into the rest of the JavaScript that is CRM. Okay, so this is the bottom end of the code that CRM is running after it launches the page. So we'll go back over to page. You can see it's all loaded. Okay. So that's how the debugging works within, or the breakpoints work within IE. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Well, let's go over to Chrome and look. So I have the same page here. So what I'm going to do is, this one works a little bit different. So this one is kind of aligned. It's kind of similar. It's got the code window on the right. It's got your JavaScript over here. So if I want to look at that, I can go and put a breakpoint in just like that. Theirs is a bar with an arrow on it instead of a dot, things like that. So if I do a refresh, same way, it loads that. There's that. Okay, our breakpoint did get hit because it reloaded, so let me try it again. Basically what happened is it reloaded the code and it knew it. So Kelvin is saying sometimes you found that Chrome doesn't break, forgot breakpoints after F5, which is exactly what I'm figuring out here. Let's see. Let's restart that. Is that working? Like I said, I don't use Chrome much at all. It's not for debugging anyway, strictly because I just know where all the pieces and parts are in within that. Try that. Nope. Anyway, so the idea here is that the breakpoints works exactly the same way. Down here, you have exactly the same kind of processes. You have the step over, the step into, step out. Okay, so debugging exactly the same. Okay, so you have your scope and your watching and things like that. So those things work exactly the same. Okay, so tips and tricks. Browser caching we already covered. Form simulator debugging. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about when you're in the form editor and you select preview, create form. Okay. Since about, I would say at least 2013, maybe some parts of 2011, I'm not positive if it changed after UR8 or not, you pretty much cannot, you cannot debug your JavaScript from within the preview window. It just doesn't, it just doesn't work. Okay. Like I said, 2015 for sure, it doesn't work. I don't know exactly what's happening, but what will happen is it will totally 100% absorb the error. Okay. So you won't see it anywhere at all. So the only way that I have found to actually do real debugging is I have to do a save and then a publish so that it's actually live. Okay. Kind of defeats the purpose of having a preview function, but that's what we got. Okay. Also, sometimes trying to attach a debugger to the preview window is sometimes problematic depending on the version of IE, the version of CRM, things like that. Okay, so what's that? Back on the Chrome thing, Lisa asked a question about where to put the breakpoint. No, either one of these breakpoints should have worked just fine, I think. Maybe I was doing it wrong. Let's see. Nope, there it is. I'm sorry. No, you're right. Okay, I think I was basically misunderstanding what I was doing here. So yeah, so it is working exactly like I thought. Okay, here are our local variables down here exactly the same way. So we can step over. There is our message. Step over that, and now we're done. Okay. Okay, thank you, Lisa. I thought I was going crazy there for a second. Like, well, it's worked every other time I've done it. Okay. So again, Errors in the simulator do not actually surface for some reason, and like I said, I think it's just the way they're absorbing them. I don't know exactly. So you have to publish the form and then open the form like you would normally. Okay. So ribbon JavaScript is a bit interesting. Okay, strictly because it is loaded in a non-standard way, and not non-standard to the browser, just non-standard to us. So if I'm looking in, oh, I did not mean to launch Outlook, sorry. If I am looking in my JavaScript here, and then again, what you see on this list of files is sometimes very easy to find your file. Sometimes it is not. Okay, so like so I'm looking at main.spx, so that's the main page, and underneath that is a page.aspx that, and underneath that is a web client API wrapper.aspx, and way underneath that is our stuff. Okay. I also have a ribbon JavaScript library that is totally separate than this. Okay. But I don't see it anywhere. So since I can't find it, and if we look at it, this is what it looks like. It's really simple. It just says ribbon button click. And if I look over here on my form, I have a button. And when I click that button, it goes, hey, you clicked a button. Okay, real simple. Okay, but now I need to find that button. How the heck do I find that button? Well, I can go do a find in files. Sorry, see it, find in files. Okay, it found it there. Okay, that's nice. That's not really what I'm looking for, because that's CRM's ribbon stuff. Okay, that's not any good. Oops. And I hit F3. Is that working? Let me go back. Oh, come on. Let me try this. Is that working? Nope, not there. Love it when a demo comes together like this. Well, it was working. I'll tell you what, let me reload the page. Let's make sure I got a fresh copy. Okay, so are we loaded? Okay. That is fine. Okay, now we're probably done loading. Okay. Well, I think the idea here is I have broken it. I'll tell you what, let me take my breakpoint out and reload it just to make sure. Usually when things get turned off in your debugger, it's because you're in a running state and it doesn't like that. You can't do some things. Not sure that is the case at this point, but let's go check real quick. Okay, there's that. Now if we go back over here, okay, make sure I still don't see it. My count, no, not there. Tell you what, when all else fails, just kill it. How about that? I got a sneaky suspicion that I've had IE open too long. As if you didn't know, IE takes up a lot of memory if it's been open too long, did too much work. Okay, well, that's not working for some reason. Not sure why. But the idea here is you can do a search over here. and then hit F3, and it will actually go into your code and find it. Okay, so what happens is, like I said, you've got I've got a file here that just displays that, and like I said, sometimes it's hard because what will happen is you'll end up down in this land here where these are called dynamic scripts, so it's actually generating kind of on the fly. So they're in here somewhere, and it's kind of hard to find. I don't know if I can do that or not. Probably not. Nope. That is fascinating. What's your one that's like that? Well, I broke it somehow. No idea how. Probably need to reboot the browser. But anyway, so the idea here is you can do a search. It pops up, and it usually works just fine. Okay? So something to remember there. Okay? Okay. Oops. Okay, one last thing here. Let's go back to our account list. Close that off. I'll tell you what. Let me just kill IE totally. And then I'll start all over again. Secret password. So Steve asked, can you put a debugger statement in the ribbon button code? Absolutely you can. That would work positively perfectly. Whoops. So, sorry. That's not what I want to do. Go back. I know. Okay. Click the new button. That's it. I click the new button. Pops up a 1. And it pops up that dreaded thing there. So let's look at what was popped up. Okay, so this is a new type of error that is in the spring release of Dynamics CRM 2015 online. Okay, so prior to this, in most cases, what you would get is, in the IE anyway, is the browser alert saying, okay, an error has occurred. What this one has done, this has actually given us a little bit more information. So how many people know what a stack trace is? Anybody? Lisa knows. A few other people. Okay. So basically, a stack trace is literally the stack of things. So think of it as books. So you've got a stack of books that you have to read to get your driver's license. You got to read them in order. Okay. Well, what this says is I started off at an anonymous function called blah, blah, blah. And then I ran that function, then I ran that function, then I ran that function, and then we got some code evaled, which ended me up in here in a function called form on load. Okay? And then what it does is says, reference error, date is undefined. Okay? Now, I don't see a line number except in here. Okay, that's mostly what these are. That would probably be line number, column number. Okay, so if I go back to my code, what I'm looking at here is date is undefined. Okay, well, remember the first thing that popped up was the alert that said my form type is equal to 1, right? Okay, well, that is a new form. Okay, so that's correct. So that means we got at least right here. And I bet if we went into our debug log, we would find this here. So that means that somewhere here, probably right here, I indeed have a problem because date is not defined. Okay. Well, now I got to go fix that. So I'm going to make this go out of the way. Go back over here, and I'm going to say for date, date equals new date. I think that'll do it. Okay, so I'm going to take that. I'm going to go into my form. Going to modify my JavaScript. Now, I will tell you one thing that I do. You saw me pull one line out. I hardly ever do that. Quite honestly, I'm just doing that just to kind of show you guys, thing here. A lot of times I'll have the entire web resource inside of a file in Visual Studio. I'll just copy the whole thing. Just sometimes it's just I'm a little bit paranoid about certain things. This is not a big deal because I know what I'm working with here. But if you ever make a lot of changes, don't worry about trying to copy line by line. Just copy the whole thing. That works just fine if you're in a singular developer environment. If you're in multiple developer environments, it can be a problem. If somebody's actually modifying the same code at the same time as you are, that can be an issue. Okay, let's try this again. Yes, I'd like to retry that. There is my type, and then there is that. And then I'm going to blame this one on Rob because he'd maybe do it. Now I got an error. It says set value is undefined or null reference. Now, how can that be? I mean, if you look at the JavaScript here, I took care of my date problem, and that number that you saw, the 2000 something, whatever it was this thing here. Basically what I'm doing, I'm taking the date, the current date and time, and I'm slapping together the month and the day and the year all as one word. Okay? And that worked fine. But then it says this thing here is failing, which is impossible. This is perfectly fine. XRM.page, get attribute, my account number, set value equals new account number. Okay? Now, I have two problems with what I did here. Who can tell me the first problem? Using a string versus an object. That is correct. Okay? So, way to go, Kevin. Jessica, thank you. Okay, so that's the first problem. Okay? What is the second problem? This is a secret problem, but I think you can probably figure it out. Let me get all this crap out of the way. Robert won the prize today. Jessica close behind. There is no account number on the form. Rule number one with JavaScript and CRM, you cannot populate a value of a field unless it's on the form. Does not have to be visible, of course, has to be on the form. So let's go add that real quick. So I'll slot back over to our form editor. Go over here, I'm going to drag that right there. That's pretty enough for me. Click save. Go back over here. Copy all my stuff. Go back to the form properties. If you guys weren't watching, I'd already have this done and be on my third cup of coffee, but I have to go slow. Save, publish. Okay, Control F5 to reload the page. I don't care, there's stuff there. Form type, date, valid type. Why didn't that work? I mean, if you look at this, this is there's nothing wrong with this. We're taking the account number, we're putting in that. That should work fine. Why didn't it work? Anybody know? The account number's on the form. Different problem. Submit mode, nope. Field type, Marianne, very close. Can you tell me why? Int versus string, that's correct. Okay, so this is one of those really weird CRM things. This is, I guess you could say it's a JavaScript thing, but I'm going to blame CRM for this one. So the account number is a string field, okay, a text field. We have collected this information from the date, so when we add these things together, it's probably coming out as an integer field, okay? Starting, it's probably 2013 is when this showed up, I think, maybe the end of 2011. They got very irritated if you tried to shove a integer into a string field. Now, JavaScript doesn't care, okay? A number's a number as long as you say it's a number, as long as you think it's a number type of thing. And you can turn a number into a string just by basically sticking it, adding it to a string, realistically. I mean, we could literally fix this by doing this, okay? Adding those two, that empty string plus that thing right there would literally turn that into a string unless I'm horribly mistaken. That's not how we're going to do that, though. So let me erase that. We're going to use the .toString method. Okay. Now, again, this is a CRM change, so if you upgraded your code from, say, 4.0 to 2011 to 2013 to 2015, if you went through that path, you may run into this sooner or later. It's those little bitty things like that where it really wasn't a big deal. They just let you get by with it. That caused a problem. Okay, save and publish. Okay, back over here. Yes, I'd like to retry. There's one, date, and looky there. Okay, is that not cool? Okay, so this piece of JavaScript got the month, added one to the month, got the date, had the full year. Not sure why it's coming up like that. I think it's actually physically adding those together. So that's not what I wanted, but that works for our example here. So anyway, so that's a perfect example of what it's like to develop JavaScript with CRM. Okay, so you have lots of little bitty things that get in the way, things you don't think about. I never have these problems. This is for demonstration. I write perfect code the first time. I know we've talked about this before, so I'm only doing this type of stuff to help you learn yourself. And anyway, like I said, I never have to worry about this. So, but I know that other people do. So anyway, that's how that works. Any questions? No questions at all? Oh, come on. Really? No? Okay. I'm using CRM 2015 online with the Spring Rollup, which you can tell by the new navigation here. Okay. So basically, the way you tell the difference between 2015 and 2015 update, or the spring whatever they're calling it, update 1, is with that thing right there. You see that thing, you know you got it. Mark asked one, basically, are you always copying and pasting between Visual Studio and the formatter? I do. There is a tool I recommend called the CRM Solution Manager. So if you go out to crmsolutionmanager.com, that will actually, if you're doing a lot of work, that will actually push directly into CRM and publish for you. That's a really handy tool. It's fairly inexpensive. It's a couple $100 maybe. So that's one I use, have used in the past. But if I'm just doing, short scripts like this, I just copy and paste. It's just easy. It's not, to me, it's not a big deal because, like I said, I'm editing Visual Studio again. But if you're doing a lot of code and you're doing a lot of updates, it really helps to be able to push, every, 20, 30 files up at once. Yep, Kevin recommended it too. Okay. Let's see. What else is there I missed? Jessica talked about the CRM Service Toolkit. I haven't seen that error. It's XPath Evaluator. That's an XML thing. I would post a thing on their website, on the Coplex site. Yeah, Jeff brings up you can run a normal development. You can run your local server for dev machine and cut down the code, the time to put the code debug cycle. Yep, that works. It's always better if the developers have their own local copy of a CRM, like on a virtual machine or something. It just makes all development better. I've talked about that in the past. If you can do it. Lisa, yeah, Jason Latimer came up with a project recently. I can't remember how far he got to basically push some of your code into Visual Studio, from Visual Studio into CRM. I haven't played with it yet, but I know he did release it. That's a good point. Kelvin mentions the web resource utility from the SDK. That one's fine. But it's command line, or at least it was command line. Or they may have fixed it. But anyway, these other tools are a little bit better. But again, if you're like you said, if you're doing multiple files, absolutely good. Okay. Resource linker, part of the XRM toolbox that Tanke has a JavaScript thing, works the same way. So that's really good to use too. Sean, yeah, Fiddler. Fiddler's really not a JavaScript debugging tool. That's the question. So Fiddler is really for network traffic. That's the only way I've ever used it. So that's really to watch things going over your network to see the times and things like that. Okay. Last one asked about tools to help with IntelliSense and JavaScript. Basically, several of the tools, like Jason's tool, I think, and then the CRM Solution Manager, both have the ability to generate code that will help you with the IntelliSense. Absolutely. Okay. So I've got some training coming up here in a couple weeks. I've got a full-blown developer training. So if you're a .NET developer and a JavaScript developer, this is what's for you. Okay. So we do a lot of plugins. We do a lot of JavaScript, a lot of just standard code. So if you're interested in that, you can go to tinyurl.com/.NET CRM developer, or look at either one of my websites, either Info-X or XML Coaches, and you can find out more information about that. So again, that is for people who are .NET developers, because we do a lot of C# stuff. Okay. So if you don't want the full-blown 5-day class, I have two other classes that are basically, these are individual. They're not actually subsets. These are, believe it or not, these are supersets of what I teach in my extending class, or the .NET developer class. So I have a 2-day JavaScript development and then a 2-day plugin development, if any of those are interested to you. I don't have one schedule of either one of these. The only one I have scheduled is this upcoming training for the .NET developer. So if you are interested in something like this, then go out to these pages. At the very bottom of the page is a form. Just put your name in there and it'll add you to a marketing list. And if I get enough interest, then I'll try to have one of these. The way I was running these two classes over the past couple of years is instead of squeezing it down into 2 days, I did 4 half days. So that is also an option. That way everybody can get their work done and things like that. So those are two things that you may want to think about. So again, the full-blown training is if you're a .NET developer and a CRM developer, or you want to develop your CRM skills. We cover, like I said, 5 days worth of stuff, everything from um, uh, just the standard SDK stuff into plugins and custom workflow activities. We do a day on JavaScript. We do a day on the External Service Toolkit. Then we get into things like sitemap and the ribbon and solutions and stuff like that. So it's a really comprehensive 5 days worth of pure development stuff. Lots and lots and lots of labs. Okay. So does anybody have any other questions? If not, then I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Well, thanks a lot again, and